Good morning, I'm Kenneth Book.
And I'm Janae Norman. Here are the top 5 things to know this Friday. Number 1, the impeachment drama in Washington.
Overnight, the House Judiciary Committee abruptly ended a marathon hearing without voting on 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. That angered Republicans who accused Democrats of delaying the vote so it could be taken this morning while more people will be watching on TV.
Number 2, the historic election across the pond.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says Thursday's vote across the UK is a powerful new mandate to get Brexit done. Voters appear to have given Johnson's Conservative Party a landslide win.
That means Britain could be out of the European Union potentially by the end of next month.
On to number 3, new antitrust concerns could be a major new concern for Facebook.
The company is working on integrating its various platforms, including Instagram and WhatsApp. Those plans could be halted by the Federal Trade Commission, which is investigating Facebook's dominance in the industry.
The FTC is now considering an injunction to stop Facebook's integration, and that could leave the company more vulnerable to a possible breakup.
Number 4 now. History was made in the NFL last night. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson broke the single-season rushing record for a quarterback, a record previously held by Michael Vick.
Jackson also threw 5 touchdowns. He's the favorite to win the MVP award. The Ravens beat the Jets 42-21.
Oof. And finally, number 5, the beauty queens making history.
In 2019, the 4 major beauty pageants have awarded the top prize to a black woman. They include Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, and Miss Universe.
While black women have worn each of the crowns before, it has never been in the same year. This year's winners sat down with our own Queen, Lindsay Davis.
Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, and Miss Universe, all black everything.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be a part of this history-making moment?
It feels amazing. I think it's such a great move forward as the world and as a society to say, look, women who were in the past never had opportunities to do things like this are now here.
I think there are times where I am disappointed because people will sometimes comment on our social media and they'll say, why are we talking about your race? Like, you guys are just 4 amazing women. I'm like, yes, we're 4 amazing women. But there was a time when we literally could not win. Like, literally.
And now we literally cannot get enough of them. For the first 30 years, black women were not even allowed to compete in the Miss America pageant, so incredible history made this year.
Yes, definitely.
All right, good Friday morning. Let's get right to the big story, the debate on the articles of impeachment against President Trump.
The vote by a House committee is expected this morning after a last-second delay by Democrats overnight. The delay followed 14 hours of bitter debate.
Meanwhile, there's new information about what the expected trial of President Trump will look like in the Senate. ABC's Serena Marshall has been on the story all night and most of the week. Serena, good morning.
Kenneth, Janae, good morning to both of you. And while that House committee vote was delayed, it's now scheduled for 10 a.m. this morning. The majority leader says when it comes over to the Senate, there's no chance the president will be removed from office.
After more than 14 hours,
the committee is in recess.
Chairman. The House Judiciary Committee breaking for the night without a vote on impeachment. It capped off months of investigations, weeks of hearings, and 2 days of bitter partisan debate, where Democrats argued President Trump abused his office to gain an advantage in the 2020 election, and they say he'll do it again.
This is a constitutional crime spree.
As Republicans challenged Democrats were simply playing politics.
You've been wanting to do that for a long time.
The committee chair abruptly ending the marathon debate, postponing the historic vote on the 2 articles brought against the president.
I want the members on both sides of the aisle to think about what has happened over these last 2 days and to search their consciences before we cast our final votes.
As members cleared out, Republicans arguing the decision, more political theater.
Because they want to simply get it back on the cameras because it's after 11 o'clock tonight and they don't think enough people is watching.
But Representative Ted Deutsch tweeting in response, a vote on articles of impeachment is one of the most consequential and historic votes any member will cast. It should only take place in the light of day, not at 11:30 at night. When they reconvene later this morning, Republicans could continue to offer amendments, turning it into another long day. If they don't, and they suggested last night they were done with amendments, they could hold the vote, sending it to the Senate, where the majority leader says,
I doubt it. There's 0 chance the president obviously would be removed from office.
The president has said he wants an aggressive trial, and that would include live witnesses. But a lot of top Republicans in the Senate are pushing back against that idea, saying that would simply prolong the trial. We're now being told the president warming up to the shorter trial. Kenneth, Janae.
Meanwhile, congressional negotiators have reached a deal that would avoid another government shutdown.
They've tentatively agreed to $1.3 trillion in spending to fund the government through next September. Some final details must still be worked out. Democratic leaders expect to vote in the House early next week, followed by passage in the Senate ahead of next Friday's deadline.
A sexual harassment investigation has led to the resignation of a top Pentagon official. Guy Roberts was an assistant secretary of defense until he stepped down last April. An inspector general's report says Roberts engaged in a pattern of misconduct that included unwelcomed physical contact with women on his staff. Roberts told investigators it wasn't his intent to sexually harass women, and he acknowledged making some inappropriate jokes.
And a Baltimore police sergeant already accused of assault now faces dozens of new charges.
A grand jury has indicted Ethan Newberg on 32 counts of assault, false imprisonment, and misconduct. Sergeant Newberg already faced 11 counts stemming from body cam footage of an arrest in June when he wrestled a bystander to the ground at the scene of an arrest.
A brutal murder is sending shockwaves through a college campus. A freshman was stabbed near the campus here in New York, and no arrests have been reported. Questions are now being raised about security as students mourn a shocking loss.
This morning, a college campus is on edge after a student's brutal killing.
I think it's really shaken up the community.
People gathered in Manhattan overnight to remember Barnard College freshman Tessa Majors. The 18-year-old was stabbed Wednesday night in a park just 1 block from Columbia University.
It's very heartbroken, that's it. Yeah. I genuinely, my thoughts and prayers go out to her family.
Police say Majors was attacked by 1 to 3 suspects demanding money. Mortally wounded, she managed to stagger up these stairs to a security booth before collapsing.
It's just shocking and very sad. We lost a member of our community like this.
Police found her uncharged cell phone and a knife at the scene as police dive team searched a pond in the park for more evidence.
The idea that a college freshman at Barnard was murdered in cold blood is absolutely not only painful to me as a parent, it's terrifying to think that could happen anywhere.
Majors' family telling ABC News Tess shone brightly in this world and our hearts will never be the same. Majors had expressed excitement about her future on a podcast before the start of the school year.
I'm going to Barnard. It's in New York City, substitute from Columbia. It's an all-girls school. I'm really excited about that.
Her killing has raised new questions about security near the school's campus. Columbia University says there is always someone in that security booth near the park, but students have their doubts.
There should be 24/7 security guard. Personally, when I go through the park, I almost never see a security guard.
Investigators are looking into whether the murder is related to a recent string of local robberies. Police detained several juveniles for questioning in the case, but later released them.
Well, just miles away from the murder in Manhattan, investigators have labeled Tuesday's deadly shootout in Jersey City a potential case of domestic terrorism.
New Jersey's Attorney General says the killings of a police detective and 3 people in a kosher market point toward acts of hate, possibly connected to a fringe branch of the Black Hebrew Israelites.
We believe that the suspects held views that reflected hatred of the Jewish people, as well as a hatred of law enforcement.
Prosecutors believe the killers acted on their own, but haven't established firm links between them and any group, including the Black Israelites. The FBI is asking the public for help gathering more images of the shootout.
6 bodies have been recovered after the deadly volcanic eruption in New Zealand. Military units wearing breathing masks combed the island despite the risk of another eruption and the risk of inhaling toxic gas, which could be fatal after one breath. A search for 2 other victims will resume tomorrow. 2 boys from Chicago and their parents are among the victims.
Federal regulators are setting up a dedicated 3-digit number to reach a suicide prevention hotline. The idea is to make it easier for anyone experiencing a mental health crisis to get help quickly, similar to calling 911 for a fire or criminal emergency. The new 3-digit number will be 988, which will likely take about 18 months before it's up and running. Right now, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline uses a 10-digit number. That's on your screen there, 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255.
And a baby in Northern California is a pre-Christmas miracle after surviving a crash without a scratch. 6-week-old Ezra was thrown from his family's SUV after it spun out of control as his father avoided another vehicle. Ulysses Benitez panicked when he looked back and saw his son was gone. He found him a short distance away, still strapped into his car seat.
God works in mysterious ways. I lost control and it spun out on the freeway, and I just remembered just feeling weightless and just thinking of my kids and my wife. So many things went through my head. Just thinking, where is he? It was muddy, it was wet. I didn't know if he was in the water somewhere. I don't know if he was on the road.
Ezra's father says he still wasn't sure everything was okay until his little boy started crying.
Definitely a miracle. Well, coming up, the growing controversy over the accuracy of Clint Eastwood's new movie, Richard Jewell. One of the stars of the film is now speaking out.
But first, the big election across the pond, what it means for Brexit and the U.S. after this. Welcome back. Now to that breaking news overnight. The results of Britain's national election are in, and the Conservative Party has secured a majority, clearing the way for Brexit to happen within weeks.
Let's go across the pond to our foreign correspondent, Maggie Rulli in the London Bureau for the latest. Hey, Maggie.
The most American person we know.
Guys, this is my first UK election. What a historic one.
Oh, my goodness. So, okay, Maggie, does this mean we might actually finally see Brexit by the January 31st deadline?
Guys, get this. We've been talking about Brexit for years now, and I know everyone here in the UK has been living with Brexit for years. It turns out we might actually finally get one. This is sort of dubbed the Brexit election. And, after that historic landslide last night, we saw Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, just getting kind of insane numbers, a majority now in Parliament here. And Johnson came out overnight even saying that he sees this as kind of a mandate from the people to go ahead and now get Brexit done. He feels like he has the support of the people. The numbers that came out last night to support the Conservative Party, he really feels like this was people telling them to go ahead with Brexit. The deadline is approaching, the new deadline for Brexit, January 31st, but that's just the deadline. We actually could see it happening even before then. And the casual poll I did of, my fellow British friends here in the London Bureau says pretty much with this election, it's all but guaranteed now that we will see Brexit happen. This is huge, huge.
Yeah, we've been waiting a long time to see if it will actually happen. And at the same time, Maggie, we're seeing headlines that Scotland could vote to leave the UK and remain in the EU. So what are you hearing?
This is what's really interesting, too, because, yes, the Conservative Party gained huge numbers last night, but another party that gained significant numbers as well was the Scottish Nationals Party. And one of their main tenets is to stay with the European Union. Now, that means if the UK leaves the European Union, they would want to remain. This could ultimately break up the United Kingdom, which is something that seems insane. It seems unprecedented. That's because it is. There is that possibility, although we should caveat by saying the Scottish Nationalist Party, if they wanted to do this, would have to get the approval of Parliament here in the UK. Will that happen? We don't know. But the sheer fact that the numbers of the SNP actually grew in this election could give them momentum. So right now it's just sort of skeptical. It's a potential, but it is something that people are talking about.
And really, there are some striking parallels for what might be to come in the 2020 U.S. election when it comes to misinformation. What can we learn from Britain?
Well, this is what's interesting, Kennedy. This is why people should really pay attention to what happened here overnight, because we've been saying for quite some time that there are so many parallels between the U.S. election and this UK election. Some of them like misinformation. Misinformation has been characterized here as a driving force from both political parties in the UK election. Obviously, we know a bit about that back in the United States as well. Another thing that's been happening here are accusations of foreign interference in this election from outside governments. Now, that hasn't been confirmed, but it's definitely a concern, definitely a caution, something we also know quite a bit about in the States as well. So as we're looking towards our own 2020 election, there are a lot of concerns for what can we learn from the UK, how they handled misinformation, how they handled outside interference. These are all really important things. And on top of that, we're also looking at the outcome of who got elected. We heard Biden even coming out last night comparing Boris Johnson to President Donald Trump. Donald Trump came out congratulating Boris Johnson. So we don't want to be saying that this is an exact parallel, but it definitely is something that Americans should be paying attention to as we approach 2020, which, guys, is rapidly approaching.
Wait, that's a serious, all that stuff was serious that you just talked about. But I want to bring up the point that you just said our election. I thought you gave up on us.
I was just going to say the we, the they, the us.
Like,
I think you're still on the wrong side.
You left us.
Guys, I will never leave you, okay? I'm like a quarter Brit now. But okay, there is one thing. There is one thing that I feel like we need to adopt from British culture. Okay, this is the greatest thing I saw out of the UK election last night. Hashtag dogs at polling stations. This is a legitimate thing. I'm not just making this up. You need to see the photos. Apparently, this has happened for years here in the UK, and it's just a trend. It's actually quite literally what it says. It's dogs at polling stations, but people bring their dogs and then they take photos of them and then they post the photo of their dog at the polling station. I'll keep explaining it just so we can show more photos, but
we saw Boris Johnson with his dog.
Yeah.
Nothing makes you want to go vote more than knowing you could see dogs. There are dogs in Santa hats. There were dogs dressed up. There are dogs in all sorts of gear at the poll station. We even saw Boris Johnson who walked in with a dog at the polling station.
Were they dressed like Winston Churchill as well? The Queen?
Oh my goodness.
Could you imagine how people brought their little queens?
Is this something you learned about in one of your James Longman lessons? Because those videos are priceless.
Lessons, they're very funny.
I can't wait for the next one.
And Maggie, I don't know if you caught that, but Kenneth, when he asked you that first question, he called you Ruly. Mm-hmm. Her name's Maggie. Do you want to call him Ken or Modi Mo, anything?
Do you know what her last name is? It's Ruly, as in unruly.
Yeah, definitely unruly for sure.
Kenny, I actually didn't even notice, and I like that we're like that.
And you know, we're friends. We're best of friends. We're pals. We're more like siblings.
3 best friends that anyone ever.
Hilarious. We were all down in D.C. together, so this is a very sweet 3-shot here.
True. Maggie, look at us talking politics again, guys.
I know. Yeah,
like
you're
we
right.
Never left.
So fancy.
We're very
Maggie,
fancy.
thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, guys.
We're all grown up.
All right, now to the firestorm over the new Clint Eastwood movie, Richard Jewell. That film is about the 1996 Olympics bombing in Atlanta.
But there are questions being raised about the movie's portrayal of a real-life character played by actress Olivia Wilde, and now Wilde is responding to the outrage. This morning, a battle of truth versus fiction.
I report the facts. You've ruined this man's life.
Surrounding the new movie, Richard Jewell. The film, directed by Clint Eastwood, is about the Centennial Olympic Park bombing in 1996, with Olivia Wilde portraying real-life journalist Kathy Scruggs in her efforts to find the bomber. Critics say the movie inaccurately suggests that Scruggs, who died in 2001, traded sex for tips about the investigation.
The FBI is looking at Richard Jewell as the bomber.
In the movie, Scruggs sparks a relationship with an FBI agent portrayed by actor John Hamm in an apparent attempt to obtain information about Richard Jewell, who was once considered a suspect but was later cleared. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the newspaper where Scruggs worked, says Scruggs is being unfairly depicted, and they're asking Warner Brothers to include a disclaimer in the movie. This morning, Wilde, now speaking out, tweeting, "Contrary to a swath of recent headlines, I do not believe that Kathy traded sex for tips. Nothing in my research suggested she did so, and it was never my intention to suggest she had. That would be an appalling and misogynistic dismissal of the difficult work." Eastwood is also defending the research behind the film.
Well, there's only so much research you could do. You can't live inside the people because they no longer exist. She did find the answer to it, so how she did it, nobody probably will ever really know.
In a statement, Warner Brothers said the film is based on a wide range of highly credible source material. Richard Jewell hits theaters today.
All right, let's get a check of our notifications, starting with Santa's sleigh looking a little different. Guinea pigs taking a ride in the snow.
And look how cute. This happened in Montreal. Guinea pigs
adorable.
in the snow.
If you're looking for a gift for the burrito-obsessed person in your life, queso-scented candle.
Oh, from Qdoba. Apparently they're
Cheesy.
offering up this very cheesy candle. The chips should not be used
Dipped in.
to dip into the wax.
But you might want to dip into this, the Museum of Ice Cream.
Yeah.
It's here.
Maybe you can have a scoop or even 2 scoops. The Museum of Ice Cream found a permanent home right here in New York City. The sweet store had been making rounds in different cities as temporary pop-ups. This new museum will be the flagship store in the Soho neighborhood. It will feature 13 never-before-seen installations like a 3-story slide and a pool of sprinkles. The 25,000 square feet museum opens tomorrow.
I'm sold. Are you?
Definitely. How about we talk about some physics?
Yeah.
The physics professor at a community college in Virginia who's going viral for the experiments he conducts in his class.
He's one of those teachers we all wish we had when we were forced to take physics.
Today is the last day of the semester at Tidewater Community College in Virginia Beach, but that's not what has the campus buzzing. It's this. Veteran professor David Wright sharing his love of physics with his students. This video of his demonstrations over the fall semester is hitting a nerve with millions of people. After 45 years at the school, he's as enthusiastic as ever, setting a fire to teach about convection, lying on a bed of nails,
just don't jump,
jumping on a pogo stick, using a skateboard in the halls. To teach students about one of Newton's laws of motion, he rolls a 16-pound bowling ball to show that an object in motion stays in motion. Best friends Erica Church and Kiara Brothers, seen here with Professor Wright, took the videos. Church never expected her post to go viral. She tells GMA it shows that if you love what you do, it'll radiate to other people. About his newfound fame, the 69-year-old father of 4 and grandfather of 7 has a similar message. He says, quote, "You should be really passionate in what you're doing, and I hope I serve as an example of that."
Coming up, we're finishing up a busy week in Washington. We'll tell you what to watch out for on this Friday the 13th.
Plus, police in Ohio are pulling over drivers, but giving them something other than a ticket. After this.
Here's what to watch out for today. The House Judiciary Committee will meet again after spending more than 14 hours debating amendments to the articles of impeachment yesterday. The committee is expected to hold a series of procedural votes, then 2 final votes, one for each article of impeachment. Tune in for live coverage beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern right here on ABC News Live.
Meanwhile, President Trump is set to welcome the president of Paraguay to the White House for a bilateral meeting. Then in the evening, the president will join First Lady Melania Trump for a Christmas reception.
And the man whose battle with ALS helped spread the world-famous Ice Bucket Challenge will be laid to rest today.
Pete Frates died Monday after an 8-year battle with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Frates was a leading advocate for ALS research and helped raise millions of dollars. His funeral mass is set for today at a church near Boston College, where he was a star baseball player. Just an incredible man, incredible life, and a big legacy also left behind.
Yeah. Well, finally from us this morning, police in eastern Ohio have had residents in tears this holiday season, but in a good way.
Officers in Salem recently turned into secret Santas. They've been stopping people on the roads and in stores and handing out $100 bills. One woman burst into tears during a traffic stop because she thought she was in trouble.
I started crying because I was honestly shocked, and an officer pulled out behind me. I was pulled over for a burnout headlight, and instead of giving me a ticket, I got Secret Sana'd by Salem Police Department.
Salem's police chief says the money came from a secret donor with instructions to give the bills to whomever looked like they could use the money. So I hope the police know who the secret donor is, because what if it was like someone who was like Robin Hood? I'm not saying that happened.
Robin Hood.
No, I'm saying
Look at you, finding a way to Grinch up a good Christmas story.
Oh, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm not a snitch, so I'm just saying Robin Hood who...
That's it from us
Robin
this
Hood
Friday.
Was,
Have a fantastic weekend
like
and an even better
right?
Friday the 13th.
I mean, we're going to work our way through this, but still have a great weekend. But Robin Hood, like, he stole and then he gave to, right?
Turn off the camera.